how Shopify sent its fulfillment operations packing. James Kelly and I will answer the question, has Shopify and Flexport tied the knot? And what does it mean for you? Welcome to the Day 2 podcast. Today's episode, how Shopify sent its fulfillment operations packing. James Kelly and I will answer the question, has Shopify and Flexport tied the knot? And what does it mean for you? I'm Jason Boyce, founder and CEO of Avenue 7 Media and host of the Day 2 podcast. With me today is my good friend, James Kelly, former Amazon insider, current Amazon and DTC seller and brand builder, current CEO of Woolly.clothing, among others. James, it's been a while. What have you been up to?
Yeah, we got a busy year. We just finished our fourth Kickstarter 2 weeks ago. And we're in the middle of launching a bunch of new products, across, the brands that I manage. And we've just had a crazy year getting on top of costs, super focused on being efficient and upping our operational rigor and doing a bunch of stuff around all that, as well as trying to get, stay focused on growth in the future. So it's been all out this year so far. How about you? How's it going?
It's going great. And by the way, I just ordered a couple of shirts on Woolly.clothing. I've got to ask, I'm asking the question, James, maybe you can answer this for me. Wool and 92 degree weather doesn't seem to mesh very well, but I'm guessing that based on the technology you put in these shirts that I can do that?
Yeah, our Kickstarter video has a section. We just launched a whole workout wear. The idea is we're calling it merino air. It's, if you like Vuori or any of these brands, now you can do that, but it's not plastic, so even if it's recycled polyester, it's still breaking down in your laundry and filling the ocean with microplastics, so this is an option that doesn't do that. But we have a whole section of videos like workout in wool. Are these people crazy? But you got to try it to believe it. We got these cool new fabric. It's all mesh invented merino. It's super lightweight, super soft, super cozy. So, there is certainly a humidity and heat range where wool starts to feel like wool, but it's pretty up there. You got to be in Central America.
To your point, James, about the operational rigor, it's very interesting. I have talked more about profitability with our clients in the last 3 months than I have in the previous 3 years. Which all makes sense. Everyone's anticipating, if it's not already here, some sort of soft landing type recession, and everyone's talking about profitability. We've built it into our 7 avenues over here. And, our 7 avenues are presence, profitability is number 2, traffic, customers. We want to know everything we can about the customer, the demographic, to make sure in the listing, which is the 5th bucket, to make sure that we're talking to the right customer, that there's good click-through and conversion rates, the product, what's going on, what are the shoppers saying on the marketplaces about the product, and then last but not least, rivals. And so we've been spending a lot of time over here at Av7 building out that profitability bucket, because it's amazing to me, James, how hard it is for sellers and brands to figure out how much money they're making or not on Amazon. So we're trying to make it easy over here at Avenue 7.
It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Once you decide to focus on this stuff and you spend 4 months looking at it every week, like I have, the number of buckets where you're like, what is that? You're amazed how many there are, and then every one of those has 15 things you can do, or you have to figure all that out anew. So we're trying to have faith that work will pay off and it'll help us kind of survive whatever's coming, and whoever comes out the end is going to be stronger. And
definitely.
And so that's the goal. It's a bear, and then, pair Amazon with, having a Shopify business and, whole different buckets and data reporting, profitability things there. And we're playing with Walmart and Buy with Prime and all this other stuff. So yeah, there's a lot to pay attention to.
Well, we're going to talk about all those things today, James. That's a nice segue. On our our previous episodes, we've done a few of these now, James. You're a regular on the Day 2 now. On previous episodes, we discussed what Shopify's response to Buy with Prime was going to be, given that they had invested literally billions into logistics. But now the news came out, and I'll snap everybody in before you answer the question. On May 4th, 2023, Shopify announced it was selling its logistics business to Flexport. Shopify will receive 13% equity in Flexport. According to their leadership, it takes ownership in Flexport into the high teens. So The suggestion is they're 18, 19% maybe is what they own in Flexport. Flexport is run by Dave Clark. You may have run into Dave Clark back in the day, former logistics leader and head of worldwide for a brief minute at Amazon. Clark spent 20 years at Amazon building its logistics and final mile business. Shopify bought Deliverr last year for $2.1 billion, and they flipped it. And now Shopify and Flexport, we're being told, have integrated. So I'm going to pause right there. James, number one, did you ever have any interactions with Dave Clark when you were back at Amazon? And what's your take on him and what he's doing over there at Flexport?
My part of the business didn't talk much to the operation side. You know, the thing about Amazon that I always found interesting was that it was like two companies. It was the operations world and it was everything else. And the operations world was like they had their own like internal wikis, all this stuff. Like it wasn't the same universe. So, you know, my exposure was through our FBA efforts and things like that, you know, because that obviously overlapped with what they did. But they're a pretty separate beast. And so, you know, Dave Clark for 20 years kind of had his own universe. I think that was probably, you know, from afar what kind of led to him and Andy Jassy conflicting and eventually parting ways. Was he just kind of ran the show. You know, I think Bezos, I'm sure, was in his ear all the time, but he had his own world. And sounds like he wanted that again, so he's got it with Flexport.
I remember reading a quote where Dave Clark wasn't too keen on Andy Jassy's micromanagement of what he was doing over there at Fulfillment and Worldwide. So I don't know if that's a rumor or if that was an actual quote or a paraphrase, but that seems to make sense. I mean, I remember saying during the pandemic what they did in terms of fulfillment and that ramp up. I made jokes that Dave Clark should get a Medal of Freedom or something for what he did. It was pretty impressive. I can't imagine he slept for 2 years during that time.
When you think about the stuff that, you know, they doubled the square footage of an already, you know, huge network. It's unfathomable. Yeah,
it's crazy. And so a couple of things about Flexport. So all in to date, according to a quick Google search, they've raised about $2.3 billion to date. They're focusing on ocean, air, truck, and rail freight forwarding, and the brokerage business. But now, as a result of this deal, they've got 6 River Systems, which is run and developed. Again, it's robotics, it's warehousing. So does this make Flexport now a viable competitor to the FBA business, where they've got all of the freight forwarding stuff, they've got final mile delivery, warehousing, and they've even got their own robotics? And of course, as a reminder, Amazon purchased Kiva Robots. What do you know about Kiva and 6 River Systems, and what do you think this means for Flexport?
Well, just to be so we're accurate, I believe 6 River was spun out in this deal to Ocado.
Got it. Okay, so 6 River Systems is no longer a part of Flexport. Okay.
Yeah, we may want to double check that quick, but I believe that was not a part of the deal into Flexport. That was then sold to a UK company named Ocado. But there's an interesting thing here, which is that very specifically in the acquisition, when Amazon bought Kiva, they cut off all Kiva's customers so that they basically kept it all in it. And 6 River Systems specifically said that they will keep all existing client bases. So essentially what I think is going on is it's being taken over by someone else, but it's essentially Flexport tech still.
Got it.
Or Deliverr tech, or whoever is going to be using it is going to be still using it. So it's kind of a complex deal space to see, I don't know what the multi-year, multi-order stuff is going to be, but it doesn't mean it's going away. I think it's still a valid question, and I'm sure there's going to be robotics in their systems, and, it's all still valid.
Yeah. Originally when I saw this deal, I thought, oh boy, now Dave Clark's got another robotics company. It sounds like he's just going to be a customer of the robotics company, which probably makes sense.
Yeah.
Given that they've only raised, I can't believe I'm saying the word only, with $2.3 billion. But in order to catch up to Amazon's capabilities, they're going to need a hell of a lot more capital. I mean, I don't know how many billions was spent during COVID that Dave Clark was able to employ, but it was a big number. And I think $100 billion in investment overall is probably on the conservative side what Amazon's put into its logistics network. So Flexport's got some catching up to do, but do you think this makes Flexport bigger, this deal?
The thing I keep thinking about with this deal is that it's like there's one word that I think it signals, and that's focus. Shopify wants to get rid of distractions, focus on the core business, and the huge opportunity in front of them with that. I think Flexport they don't want to start their own Shopify. They don't want to do this. They want to focus on their core business, and that's Deliverr, and that's, overseas freight, and, that's all the stuff that they do. I think Ocado, I read a little bit about, who they are. They're a logistics company, right? So they can focus, so
Right.
I think the through line, and it's something that I'm feeling a lot, is, stop all the stuff that doesn't matter, focus on the stuff that does, and get really, really good at it. And I think that's what a lot of these deals look like to me is an executive room saying to the rest of the team, like, it's not the time to think big about 5 years out. It's the time to do really, really good at what we do today, and just, knock it out of the park.
Yeah, and James, and to your point, there was a news article that came out just this week, or maybe it was last week, that said that collectively the GMV value of goods being sold on the Shopify platform now matches the GMV being sold by Amazon 1P, so the retail business. Now, the retail business has been pretty flat for Amazon over the last couple of years. So, and the lion's share of that GMV is still going to third-party sellers like yourself. If you're Amazon, James, and you see this headline, and Shopify is now out of the logistics space and they've divided up the robots going to one spot, and Flexport just got a little bit bigger with a lot more tech and capabilities. Do you even care? Does this change any of the calculus at Amazon, or is this just another day for them?
I think if I was Amazon, I would do what they're doing. They're coming out with things like Buy with Prime. It's a really slick product. It's probably their best product launch I've seen in, maybe ever. Like as far as just working and customers are using it. I wouldn't say it's gangbusters, but a lot of the stuff Amazon does, you turn it on, you do a bunch of stuff, and you get like 2 clicks in 6 months. I think the first brand I turned Buy with Prime on, I had an order before I woke up. I turned it on. It was like the last thing I did at night. And I woke up to order notifications. I was like, oh, but that's different. So I think a bunch of companies right now are doing the like product market fit dance, right? Like, what are all the ways to dip our toes in the water to figure out the way to jump in, where there's a nice deep end? And, Buy with Prime feels like that. I'm sure Amazon's got 1,000 other ideas about making a Shopify competitor and stuff like that. I think they're figuring it out. They're going to keep going they just want to be involved in some part of the pie, whether, I think Amazon at the end of the day is if you sell on Shopify and you fill with FBA, they're probably okay with it. If you sell Shopify via Buy with Prime and then ship with FBA, they're happier. If you are an Amazon brand and a Shopify brand doing all that stuff, they're even happier. If you're just an Amazon brand, I think they just know it's a wild world that's going to keep growing. As long as they have, a touch point somewhere on a transaction, then they know that they have a future in that part of the world. So they're okay with it.
Yeah, and ironically, on your play-by there in terms of what Amazon likes and doesn't like, certainly if you're Amazon only, when we look at across our 100 clients that we work with, the Amazon only folks just don't compete as well as folks like you who are building a brand off Amazon as well. And so I wonder if there's something to that story for Amazon as well. They're seeing that, they're recognizing it, and they probably don't mind that you're Amazon only, but they probably can see the numbers that if you have a brand off of Amazon, you're doing better on Amazon as well. So Buy with Prime is a great way, I call it a Trojan horse, for them to get more of that direct-to-consumer e-com business ultimately. But, I think you and I have been talking about this thing. I've just been predicting every year and failing and getting it wrong that Amazon's going to launch their Shopify competitor. Do you think that happens this year, or are they going to keep polishing up Buy with Prime and the benefits that brings first?
It's an interesting question. I haven't thought a lot about this recently, but I saw this stat the other day that kind of like got my attention, and it was that for people under, call it 29, search on search engines for them was only like, it was in the 30s or low 40s, and social search and other search was, how they discover stuff.
Wow.
So think YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. And, I've seen this with, people that work for me who are younger or, anybody I see. It's like, you mentioned something, they don't Google it, they go straight to the Instagram. So if you think about an extension of Buy with Prime, I mean, like Instagram, Facebook, they can't figure out how to get anybody to buy anything on their websites. But man, if you could just one-click buy with Prime off Insta, I think it would go crazy. There's big, huge traffic sources that are not well monetized yet from an e-com perspective, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all these places. So I think there's 100 opportunities we're probably not thinking about, and Shopify is a hard thing to unseat. So, maybe they go a totally different route, That's something I would welcome. I don't need a Shopify competitor. I need a way to monetize my Instagram channel.
I wrote that down. One-click buy with Prime on Insta or TikTok. Oh.
No-brainer.
And no-brainer. Now, I wonder if TikTok would allow it. I can't see them preventing it because they're building up their own warehouses here in the United States and seeing themselves as maybe being able to be the one social platform that can figure out shopping. But that makes so much more
TikTok
sense.
has is I don't want to give them my payment information. So if it's on Amazon,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. And maybe there's a legislative deal in there to be made too, where okay, you could stay here.
Yep.
TikTok.
Yeah, you got to let Amazon, you got to let American companies help you transact, but you can stay.
Yeah.
Feels like that's much more likely to me than a total shutout. Some kind of get some of this business back in the U.S. and then we're okay. Like a joining of hands. But who knows? I mean, I feel like that's just a random number generator. What comes out of that political process? It's hard to guess.
The buy with Prime, the more I think about it, the more I like it. Of course, I think this is the third time I mentioned on the podcast that Andy Jassy talked about buy with Prime in his annual shareholders letter. And you just know that CEOs don't talk about these things. As long as Andy Jassy's there in the CEO seat, he's going to continue to put investment into it because he talked about it as an investor meeting thing. The possibilities are very interesting. The buy with Amazon forgive me, what's the name of that program where they're the credit card processor? That never really got wide adoption, even though
Pay with Amazon or Amazon Pay.
Amazon Pay, thank you. That never really got wide adoption. It was certainly used and most e-commerce websites have it, but it really does adding that to your fulfillment network with the buy with Prime so that it's an accelerant to their pay business as well, I would imagine. So I can't say enough about buy with Prime. I think you're the first person that I've spoken to that said buy with Prime on Insta, but that's brilliant. That's absolutely coming. James. Great call out.
Like it has to be, right?
It has to be. And it's so much easier prospect than building this enormous SaaS e-commerce ecosystem that they haven't been great at in the past anyway. This bypasses all of that. Gosh, you're making me feel old because I Google everything still, James.
I still do too. So,
all right, thanks for
we're going to be relics.
Let's talk about this. You talked about focus, and I think it's a really smart call out. If you're Shopify and you're Toby and you don't have to come into the weekly meeting and see how much your logistics network sucks because your team's just not good at it.
Yeah.
What are the things you want to focus on at Shopify that can move the needle for a brand like you, James, or other sellers that are out there potentially?
Yeah, I don't think Shopify has the DNA to be a logistics company. There's such different things. I went to the Shopify.
Logistics is painful.
It's like running a military operation, and it's a very different. I went to the Shopify developer event in Washington last summer, and they invited me to come meet a bunch of what do they call themselves? Shopify. It was an interesting meeting. They're like super nice people. They're really, it's a much friendlier, warmer environment for sellers than Amazon is, as you can imagine. And, I just had this feeling. I was like, oh, this is much friendlier than I remember Amazon being. And looking at it now, I'm like, this is definitely not the people who are going to run a cutthroat fulfillment network, squeezing pennies per shipment and, Kaizening every single step.
Making people pee in bottles, that sort of thing.
Dave Clark's good at that. So yeah, I think it made sense for them to just say like, hey, we're not going to do this. Let's let Dave Clark and Walmart figure it out. There's other people that can compete on that front. To your point of what do they do instead, with just the last month or two, I think is, the next tidal wave of things to figure out is like already crashing on our heads, right? Like what are the many implications of GPT and LLMs for e-commerce? I don't even think we've seen anything, but it's coming, right? Like I'm trying to figure out what to do with that. And, like we just talked about Instagram and Facebook, TikTok, I don't think anyone's really cracked the code on what's the way to make that work for e-commerce. I think also like if I was Shopify, I'm betting behind the scenes, there's a pretty ugly attrition number on their stores right now. Debt's tightening, consumers are tougher every day. CPCs are rising. It's getting tough to operate these days. I think there's going to be a lot of, the old guard who kind of goes down or just goes with the, kind of dies silently. I think you're seeing it in the aggregator world. You're probably seeing it everywhere. And so they got to figure out how to get their next million shops open. What does that mean? So yeah, I think they got a lot of stuff coming. They got a lot of other problems to focus on.
James, what about their media network? Has that been launched? Can you buy traffic on a Shopify.com website, and does it work? Does it drive traffic to your business, or is that sort of an area of opportunity for them?
They have their shop app. We feature in it. We've done a little experimentation. It feels like Target.com to me, or like eBay. It's like one of those things you're like, oh, well, I could maybe get 2% extra. But essentially every channel of marketing, advertising, selling is about the same amount of work, right? So it's got to be a needle mover. It's not there. I don't think they've cracked that nut either. They need to. I don't know why there's not an Amazon of Shopify stores yet, that they have everything to make it.
It's that push and pull that he gets from their sellers, right? Their clients, their customers, like you guys. Like, I don't know that a lot of those folks want Shopify to turn into a marketplace. I think that's the only public comments that I've seen from Shopify in terms of why they haven't done it yet. But you're right. I mean, it's almost a no-brainer.
What's the argument against traffic?
It's a really good question. I don't know that the argument is a good one, but I think the idea that they would have to compete with other folks selling on Shopify their similar products and have to get into the mix there on a marketplace is really tough. I mean, there's a lot of DTC brands out there that don't like the marketplace game. They don't think it works. I'm with you, James. What's the bad part about more traffic? Amazon shoppers would love the opportunity to have their Shopify listings go live on a marketplace that could potentially come out of nowhere and compete with Amazon. I don't think there's anyone else that could come out of nowhere. I mean, you were talking about, some of the media stuff on Shopify. It's funny, the Walmart advertising, which is generating a lot of revenue for them, the business model opportunity and the growth path is there for the Shopify executives to build out this marketplace and start making hand over fist with media spend, the advertising network. I was looking at the last quarter's numbers at Amazon. I think they netted more in cash from ad spend last quarter than what operationally what AWS drove to their bottom line. Now, they won't talk about that, but that margin is enormously high. And I think maybe Shopify is looking at that as an opportunity for them to grow and gain share value. Shifting gears to Walmart just for a second, it's interesting. I mean, you remember when sponsored products launched at Amazon, it was a nickel a click, and then all you had to do was set up an auto campaign and everything was peachy. That's kind of where Walmart is right now. They're adding a lot of these products, but outside of auto campaigns, there just isn't a lot of value for the Walmart advertising, at least from what we're seeing so far. I know it will evolve and will get better, but I think if I'm an investor in Shopify and I want to see what that extra bandwidth, how that extra bandwidth that Toby now has gets applied. I'm thinking figuring out ways to make more ad revenue has got to be at the top of his list.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't. It strikes me that there's a lot of people in the e-com world that, it's like the equivalent of a NIMBY, like not in my backyard. They've got a little business model that probably works for them and they're just afraid of upsetting the apple cart. But even if you're not listed in a marketplace on Shopify, I hate to tell you, but every customer is looking at you on Google or wherever they get you. They're gonna re-Google you, or they're gonna look at you on Instagram. They're gonna look for you on Amazon. Like, it's effectively a diversified marketplace already. And I think the longer you resist kind of like letting that mental model permeate you and how you operate, the harder it's going to be for you to evolve because it's going that direction. This captive world, unless you're Apple, there's like how many companies in the world successfully build a walled garden and keep people in it? It's very few. Most products aren't iPhones. So I think you just gotta figure out how to compete in the broader internet, the broader marketplace, across Instagram. I think if anything, where I'm trying to get, to skate ahead of the puck or whatever the Gretzky thing is, I just know that, like, right now I manage my businesses like, here's what I'm doing on Amazon. Here's what I'm doing on Shopify. Here's what I'm doing on Instagram. Here's what I'm doing on Google. And I don't think that customers think that way. And so how do we run our business the way customers look at a product? Like I've noticed little hints that like when I have my ad spend on Amazon, my organic traffic on Shopify goes up. And, there's all these complex interplays between customer behaviors and traffic and all this stuff. And it's so hard to sort out. But I have a strong belief that's the future of all this. And the sooner you can figure out how to make that work for you. Right now it's about survival. It's about like surviving this like rough, choppy period and figuring that out. I think it feels like a big thing to me.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we live in a sales agnostic space right now. And if you make great products, you want whoever's going to buy you want to get in front of whoever's going to buy your product and get that feedback. And it's interesting, what your strategy is based on those different sales channels. What percentage of the work for each of those sales channels is the same? Is it 50%, 70%, and then there's like a 30% difference from the way you approach all those different sales channels? Or is it 50-50?
The only ones we really ever gotten to appreciable sizes is Amazon and Shopify. And I would say Shopify is probably 50% premium on work input, just because there's so much you have to do for like page organization, and, site merchandising and all that stuff. But Amazon used to be the kind of set it and forget it. And it's pretty far from that these days. Now I have an Amazon store. I got to remerge that every so often. I got to make sure my deals are up to date. There's so much to be keeping an eye on every week at this point, that, I'd say they're becoming more par. And the thing that's, a little hard to tell about it is we have, 3-4 agencies that we work with now, along with contractors and, content producers and all this stuff, and what allocates to what, I don't know. But it's, as much as you can, you try and get it one core brand set of work, and then that distributes to all the channels. It's not quite that way, but that's the way we try and pull.
That's really smart in order to address it that way. And you want to make sure that you have that brand continuity across channels too, with respect to the flexibility that you need to build into the different types of customers coming to the different types of channels. But, to your point, shoppers aren't thinking that way. They're like, where can I get it? Where can I get it fast? And where can I get it delivered to my door? So I totally agree with your comments on these Shopify sellers who should get over themselves and be very happy with the possibility of a marketplace. But we'll see where it goes. Maybe that's what they're going to spend all their newfound free cash flow on. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Flexport is really interesting to me. And then there's this bill that I thought was going to get passed in December. Chuck Schumer put it on the shelf, S2992. That's this America Compete Online bill that would have required a company the size of Amazon to allow others to offer FBA Prime-like delivery services, right? That was one of the things. And we did this whole podcast episode earlier on where Jassy was speaking at the Code Conference and the last Code Conference, and he was talking about how that would ruin Amazon Prime and the shopper experience and everything. I actually think it would strengthen the Amazon Prime experience. But if anybody can do it, you got to believe it's got to be Dave Clark. The question that I have is, can Dave Clark and team over at Flexport raise $100 billion to build out a network that could equate to what Amazon has built at FBA?
Short answer, no. I don't think they could raise $100 billion. But I read an interview with Dave Clark, maybe just from like a week ago. He said he doesn't want to necessarily compete with FBA. He's not trying to replace it. He wants to be complementary.
Okay.
And I don't
know if I buy that, but okay.
It's interesting to watch. I think the interesting thing about Flexport is they've grown. I think they did $5 billion last year, and that's up from $670 million in 2019. So, and it's they haven't seen all these other companies in this space that went like this for COVID and then flattened, and then restarted, and Flexport's didn't dip at all. It might be accelerating, and so there's something they're doing that's working, and I'm sure that Dave Clark. I don't know him that well, but to do what he did at Amazon, there's got to be some part of him that sees some unique opportunity that he can, uniquely execute on what Flexport's doing. And I kind of agree, like I can't imagine trying to compete with Amazon and FBA. Like you said, even if you had $100 billion trying to build that, it would take you 20 years. It'd be so hard to do. So I think there's a great like product market fit dance happening right now of everyone trying to figure out where do you fit in. I did this thing recently where I put on my LinkedIn page, I just put a Calendly link for 1 hour a week for anybody to schedule a call with me and talk about anything they want. And I've been getting a lot of interesting conversations out of it. And so one guy I've talked to him a few times now. He's starting what he's calling like a distributed distribution company, where basically like stay-at-home moms just store stuff in their basements, and when they're out running errands, they deliver packages.
Wow. Well, that's a little bit like the Deliverr model, the Deliverr with 2 R's model, the company that Shopify acquired. Talk about gig economy. That's to the nth degree. Interesting.
Yeah. And he's got, he's a smart guy. He's got a military background, so he's a logistics guy, and he's like, I know there's millions of these people across the country that are stay at home. They need some extra income coming in, and he's like, I think we could build this to, he's already got some amount of people signed up. And I'm just like, well, I don't know if that's going to work, but it's going to be ideas like that.
Yeah, right.
And he's like, I can beat anybody on price. I can beat anybody on speed as long as you fit, these characteristics. Yeah. And so I was like, well, it's really interesting. I mean, I'm not going to try it, but I wish you luck.
Well, it's an ambitious goal, and it's very interesting. I don't think it's going to be an end-to-end solution by any means, but it does solve for some of those trickier final mile deliveries in places where the opportunity doesn't warrant big capital investment into enormous warehouses and delivery networks, right? Like the BFEs that, Amazon's still using the USPS for. So very interesting model. So is Shopify and Flexport, are they married at this point? Do you see this maybe evolving into something where they, at some point in the future, become the same company? Or is that maybe not something that's worth them considering?
I can't imagine that Dave Clark would be excited about that.
Okay. Tell me why.
Working for Jeff Bezos 2.0, the whole point was to get out on his own. Like that to me, it just is like, I wonder if that's what he's interested in. And also, like I was just saying, it's grown from under $1 billion to $5 billion in 3 years, 4 years.
That's not bad.
That's
There's
a good business.
not a lot of attention. There's not a lot of microscope on them. They're not getting dragged out in front of Congress right now, which could change with the merger.
And I think, if you're Dave Clark, you spent 20 years being the guy who built everything behind the scenes,
or someone else to take
just reaping the benefits. And, being a logistics company, that's essentially who you are. And there's a great business there. And there's, like you said, there's not a lot of microscope. And, you can just focus on the hard problems and let it take care. If you can offer a faster price and better speed, then you're going to win, period. You don't have to worry about marketing and all these other difficult things. But I also think, as much as we just ran the numbers earlier, and Shopify is maybe 20% of e-com, that leaves 30. So they'd be cutting their market in. Think about whether they'd be cutting off. I'm sure Shopify would want something from them. They want everybody.
Yeah, they want everybody.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense for them. I would agree with that. And Walmart is still small.
They probably want to be customer agnostic. But
certainly, Dave Clark's happiness meter will be better if he still maintains his own destiny there at Flexport rather than jumping in with Toby, who a year ago paid $2 billion for a company that he just flipped. Right? I mean, a lot has changed in the last year. It's almost like 3 years crammed into one, but still there's a lot of uncertainty that comes with somebody who leads like that, right? I'm not saying that was a bad decision either way, but clearly it'll be very interesting to watch.
It's a lot more fun when you're making the crazy decisions instead of responding to the crazy decisions.
Yes, indeed. I can attest to that. It definitely is. First of all, before we started the show today, James, I've got to get this story in. We talked about the 6 River Systems and how that team started the Kiva Robots company, sold to Amazon, and then left after their non-compete was over to start 6 Rivers. Shopify bought them, and then as part of this divestiture, you reminded me that Flexport didn't pick up this robot company, but another logistics provider did. You have some history with Kiva, huh?
Oh, yeah, with 6 River, for sure. Yeah. So my quick story is, the last job I had at Amazon, one of my close coworkers, Jerome Dubois, he left. I left to start my little DTC companies, and he left to raise money to start Six River Systems. And 3 years later, he sold for $600 million. And he had offered me a first hire role there. And I said, I got to see what's going on with kilts.
But you know what? There's a happy ending there. You had a nice exit with the kilts and everything. So
yeah, right.
It's okay, Jan. It's okay.
So I wish Jerome the best. He's a great guy, and they're doing cool stuff. But, it would have been fun.
We've all got our Six River Systems story, James. Don't feel bad. Thanks for sharing that with the group. Do you use Flexport by any chance for any of your businesses? Are you importing anything with them?
We kind of we're pretty agnostic. We try everybody every once in a while. It's kind of how we think about it. I'm going to sound ignorant. I don't manage this directly.
Okay.
So my hands-on stuff is a little, lightweight, but what I've taken away from seeing what my business partner who does that stuff do is we can't quite tell what their technology is or what their advantage is. And we tend to just go with the guys that our factories in China ship with. And it gets there just as fast. It gets there just as cheap. It tends to just happen. We don't have to, it doesn't feel like an insurmountable, technical advantage or anything like that they have yet. They may be building something, or, we may not be the right customer for that. So, the international freight business and the freight business in general is stuck in 1985, and it's going to take a monumental effort to pull it forward. So it'd be exciting if Flexport can help make that happen. But, it's not a big thing for us. I don't know. How about you? What do you see with it?
It's a mixed bag across all the brands. We don't spend a lot of time on logistics other than screaming up and down when when our clients get close to being out of stock and helping them understand that that's not good for business. And I'm happy to not have to be mixed into the container business anymore. After moving those pool tables across the world,
oh my God,
my previous business, I'm very happy to not be involved with that. But I'm just trying to see what the benefits are here for sellers. I mean, I think the real benefit, James, and I'd love to get your thoughts, is now Shopify can stick to its knitting and really start to innovate in ways that help brands that are selling on the Shopify SaaS platform sell more, do more, and grow their businesses without the distraction that executive team perhaps had with the logistics. So again, you said this better than anybody. The main word coming out of this deal is focus. Are there any other ways that you can see where this could benefit brands and sellers that are in your space or outside of your space?
The whole thing with logistics is that you need size and you need scale to deliver meaningful benefit, right? So I think the bigger Flexport gets, the more I'll pay attention, and I'm sure that they will figure out ways to drive efficiency in things that are, still very inefficient and kind of still very blind, right? Like as it is today, you put something on a boat and you just cross your fingers and, 98.5% of the time it gets where it's going. And, even with Amazon buying ships and doing all their stuff, it still feels very much the same. And so, I'm excited to have some big thinkers. I've been watching, LinkedIn. I see Dave Clark is pulling over a ton of, really smart, long tenured Amazon people that helped him build the network there. And so, I think there's, a friend of mine worked at Amazon, just got hired there a week or two ago, doing a whole other set of stuff, really high level data analytics. So, I think they're pulling in a lot of people. I think they're probably going to do really cool stuff. And, I think logistics is one of those things where you really want to spend 90% of your time thinking about customers and traffic and conversion and all that stuff. And then, once every 4 months, you got to take a hard look at your logistics network and see is there anything you need to change? And, and so you just always got to keep pulse on who's doing what and, what opportunities are there. So, I'll keep watching them for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely paying attention to them, and Shopify as well. I mean, that's no small feat to match Amazon retail in terms of GMV through its platforms. And if they could just make that next step, spin that baby up as a marketplace and start driving traffic to it, I think that's a very nice growth path for them as well. Maybe a hockey stick growth path. We'll see. This e-commerce move, just recapping here, James, it seems to be a very smart move by Shopify. After a lot of pain and suffering, they offloaded that to Flexport, and then as well as the warehouse robots ability. Dave Clark is serious. He's a serious logistics player. He's done it. He led the team that changed the world basically in e-commerce on the logistics side, and now he's doing it at Flexport. We'll see how broad he goes, but this is definitely adding some new tools to his toolkit. Logistics is a total pain. I mean, we spent a little time talking about it. More competition is a net positive for sellers and brands. Anything that they can do to lower that cost of sales for brands like you and the like, James, I think is a win for the space. I loved your call about buy with Prime. I got to give you credit where credit is due. Buy with Prime on Insta is a no-brainer. I think that makes a lot more sense than them going out and try to build that Shopify SaaS platform and compete head-to-head with them. But we'll see what they do. It makes a lot of sense. But if one thing is for sure, I'm sorry you walked away from that Six River Systems exit. You'll have more opportunities, James.
Darian and Mike.
Yeah, and you're building a great company over at Wooly. But as always, it's a pleasure having you here. And this is going to continue to be fun to watch, and especially as we start seeing what's going on in the AI space, right?
Yeah. I hopefully we'll talk again in a month or 2 or 3 months. And I bet you the thing on the tip of everybody's tongue that is going to be what you're doing with ChatGPT to make your store run better, so I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a whole new world in 3 months.
Well, let's do that episode. I know our team is looking at about 55 different new AI systems that seem to be sprouting by the minute right now.
I'm already exhausted.
Yeah. Just keeping up with them is exhausting. It's like It makes the aggregator space look like peanuts compared to the capacity required in the new companies being launching. But it's an exciting time for sure, James. As always, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate your views and your insight, which is always spot on. And let's roll this back in a couple of months, okay?
Sounds good to me. Good to see you, Jason.
Thanks
for having me.
Thanks, buddy. If you're ready to start growing and protecting your brand on Amazon with a team of experienced Amazon operators, you can visit us at day2podcast.com. That's day2podcast.com. Lastly, if you know of anyone else who would gain value from this podcast, from great guests and co-hosts like James Kelly and that strategic mind of his, please share it with them. Thanks for listening and happy selling.